for me, like, I hate buzzwords, and everybody always says the same thing. Oh, I'm competitive. I hate to lose and all that other stuff. Like, who doesn't say that? But it's actions, right? It's the desire to like make an impact. Like, that's one of the biggest things that motivates us and our team is to make a difference, to do something that both sides really, really enjoy, and that saving customers money, helping get their equipment fixed, but then technicians, I gotta look, like, we've paid one guy like $90,000 this year, and
this is awesome.
I know, it's unbelievable. And then we're 8 months into the year. We didn't exist in 2022. So this guy, he's a technician. He has his own group of customers. I don't know what he made last year, but he's probably going to double his existing income because of our app. Like, that's unbelievable.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. And he's doing it probably in a way that he enjoys. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of Construction MF'ers. Today, I have a good friend of mine, Alex Kraft. He has done lots of cool stuff. I was a guest on his podcast a number of years ago. A lot of you may have recognized Alex. Alex has an excellent company solving a real problem out in the real world of construction. The company's called Heave. I'm excited for Alex Kraft to tell you all about it. He's the founder and CEO. Alex, welcome to Construction MF'ers.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Me too. Welcome. So, dude, back to our original time. We're not going to go through Kobe and MJ today, but for any of the guests that want to know where we stand on that, they can go back to your podcast that we did. But tell me about Heave, the story of Heave. I have some excellent, cool points that I think I want to make sure you touch on, but let's go through it and how you started, because all of our audience here is business owners for the most part.
Very good. Well, it's been really easy. So
yeah.
We'll start there. Everybody knows that starting a company just goes according to plan and is very simple. So when we first met, we hadn't figured it out. So we started, today, most importantly today, we are Uber for heavy equipment mechanics. That's the simplest way to explain it. I know I don't necessarily love explaining it that way, because everybody likes to tell you, hey, well, I'm Uber for this, or I'm this, but it's just people understand it. Like, the basic principle is you have construction customers who run heavy equipment. I run cat loaders, Komatsu excavators. Excuse me. When they break and they go down, instead of just going the legacy dealer route, calling in, they can open up a Heave app and then get a technician. That's simple.
So, like, when you told me about this at first, I thought it was cool because you've had a couple evolutions of how you want to use the technology. Mm-hmm. But what I thought was fascinating about this in particular was we have so many customers in the dirt world that are specifically in site contracting, directional drilling, build, even concrete has their own equipment and material, and there's heavy stuff that goes down. And when it goes down, like, the whole day is shot.
Right.
And then what happens is it's even more frustrating because you can't get someone there that day or the next day. And so they're always either trying to, I've had this country so many hours, like, do I hire my own technician, but then I don't want to root for stuff to break because I just have this extra cost, what can they do? Or I have to go to the dealer, or they try to find these other ancillary places that just don't exist. And so when you brought that up to me the first time, I thought it was fascinating. They can literally go to an app, say, I have this machine, it's down, this is my location, tap a button, and it will locate a service technician for them and get them there within, what's a typical time frame?
24, 48 hours, and it's the way it works, because you're right. Like, I call, or I equate, like, the traditional experience with a dealer as like being in line at a deli, or like at Publix, like the deli. Like, I just go here, pull a number, but you have at least at Publix, like, now they're serving number 72, and you're like, okay, I'm 87. In service, there is no transparency to anything, really. So you don't know where in the line you are, and that's one of the things that drives customers crazy, is that, when am I going to get somebody? Because when you talk to customers, I mean, I've been in the industry for 20 years, like, they always tell you, like, hey, if you can just give me an idea, I can plan around it. I can move equipment, I can move people, I can do that. But the worst part is just not knowing. And so that was one of, like, the fundamental features that we wanted to employ, is that when a customer requests service on our app, they see who's available and they see when. And they see all of, like, this person, everybody has, like, all these independent mechanics have their own LLC. So they see the name of the company, and then they see their rates too. So you can see, like, okay, Robert Gray with AER equipment repair, he can be there Friday afternoon, he's $156 an hour. So John Smith with such and such company, he can be there Thursday afternoon and he's $135 an hour. So we give customers the ability to choose, which they don't either get at the dealer as well. Like, you're just assigned somebody.
So you're just giving them like full transparency. They can pick the daytime. They
Yep.
can manage their schedule, the cost.
Right.
So how does someone pay for the service? How is that all done? Do they they eventually have to contact Heave and go through some process?
No. So you download the app, you set up an account, you order service. We're the invoicing party. So when the repair is done, we invoice the customer for the service.
So, Alex, I'll tell you this interesting story. So I got a phone call from one of our customers, probably about a month after you had originally told me you shifted the business plan. So this is probably February we were talking, right? So now it's March.
Right.
We knew what you were doing. You had already told me the shift. I thought it was cool. You told me that it was kind of picking up fast, growing fast, and I was like, this is awesome. And there's like now your third iteration of Heave, which I want to get to, but like I want to stay on what a Heave is for everybody that's listening. So I get a phone call from a customer we know really well. Great customer of yours happens to be now too. And he says, Scott, I wanted to thank you for this help. I'm helping do something. And he said, I said, hey, how's Heave working out for you? Have you tried it? He goes, not only tried it, we revamped our entire mechanical repair and operation system off it. It saved me weeks worth of time on jobs. It saved me, he can't even count how many tens of thousands of dollars in repairs. And what he equated to what, like almost hundreds of thousands of dollars and what would have been downtime, potential, not liquidated damages on projects, but just delays, construction delays, and efficiencies we didn't even get into. And this is a large site contractor, probably doing, $15, $18, $20 million a year on all the biggest projects you can imagine here in Tampa. And they're doing a great job. So I just want to let you know that's a true testament. Like, I've heard that third party, hadn't shared it with you before.
Good. I'm glad that he's not, blowing smoke up my skirt. But no, I know who you're talking about. So we just filmed a customer testimonial with him that we're excited to put out. And that was like one of the first, like the biggest questions we were trying to get to the bottom of with that company was, hey, tell us how much you're saving. So when we filmed the testimonial, I was there at his office and he was able to pull out his financial statements. So they're on track to save $500,000 this year in maintenance by using our app. Like, an insane number. And especially like in today's environment, the cost of everything is going up. So like for contractors, materials going up, equipment pricing going up, rentals going up. And then he can look at, he's doing more work than he did last year, and maintenance is going down by that much. It just speaks to
$500,000 is a huge savings.
Straight to the bottom line.
Yeah,
unbelievable. And so, there's a couple things that we have a unique advantage or position on, and what enables us to save customers that much money is we're all brands. So like they use us for all their different brands. Like where traditionally, if you have five different brands, 5 Cat, Komatsu, Deere, Volvo, Bobcat, you have to involve 6 different dealers, to get your equipment serviced. And that's one of the unique things with us is that, by using independence through our app, we'll have one technician go out to a job site, fix 3 different brands. Yeah. That's one trip, one service call. You're not getting, multiple trip charges, and it just adds up over time.
And that number of $500,000, that's just actual dollars spent. Mm-hmm. That doesn't even count like, I was back on the job 2 days later instead
Correct.
of 5.
Yeah, there's no, I wish there was a way to really calculate, really what downtime costs. I'm sure there's at some point we'll be able to do like a case study. But yeah, that's just invoice to invoice, what we're saving people.
Well, what's great about that is hard costs are a great place to start, and then you can live in the soft cost world of savings later on. All right, so let's dive into the journey of you into Heave, because what I don't think a lot of people may know is Heave may have started here now in what, 2020, right?
2020.
So you guys are a little more, almost 4 years into this, but your life and your experience has been in this arena for a long time. So touch on that a little bit.
So my professional career, I started working for an equipment dealer. So I worked for a Volvo dealer. Started in 2004 as a salesperson. Worked my way through the company. I was the chief operating officer for 2.5 years, and then the company was sold right as COVID was happening. We started Heave. The mission was similar. Like, we wanted to employ technology to improve the customer experience. It was kind of wild to me that there had been no difference and no change in terms of how customers were buying, renting, ultimately getting serviced. It was just all done person to person. And we didn't start the company because of COVID, but I thought at the time that, hey, with the COVID environment and less person-to-person interaction, it would be like this massive headwinds. I was wrong. But we started initially as like this kind of Expedia type model where a customer could, through an app and a website say, hey, I want to buy a wheel loader. I'm in Tampa. And then we just get them 4 or 5 quotes. Once again, making it a simpler experience. Because when you talk to customers, they're used to salesmen just showing up at their office every Monday, every Wednesday. Hey, do you need anything? And there's not a ton of value add in that. And so that was our initial model. It was a brick wall, after 6-12 months, because at the end of the day, we didn't own the inventory, and so we needed the dealers to participate. And unfortunately, I mean, it's not just this industry; it's every other industry. When you have basically a monopoly, there's no incentive to improve. There's no incentive to innovate. And really, what we kept hearing from dealers was, well, I mean, we sold $700 million of equipment last year, and not a penny of it was online. We don't have to do this. And there's just something that I realized, unfortunately, that we couldn't build a business with those dynamics.
Yeah. It's interesting because a lot of times people will say, oh, I started out this company and it wasn't until the first time I pivoted, or this major problem which forced me to do something, which ultimately becomes a pivot, but maybe it wasn't initiated. Was this sort of forced upon you by something, or was it an idea one day?
No, it was forced upon us because we couldn't make progress. And now what we kept hearing, though, from customers was, hey, this is cool. Like, I don't love salesmen coming by here all the time. It doesn't really serve a purpose. But, my real pain is in service. And just people flat out tell you service sucks. And it sucks. It has sucked. It sucked from my first day on 2004 and still sucks today. And for the reasons that we talk about, right? You read how many articles about how there's a shortage of technicians. It's true. I was told in 2004 that, hey, we're going to have a real problem because we have a lot of really talented technicians who are going to be retiring in the next 5-6 years. And there's not enough coming up to where we're going to be able to replace them. There's going to be a knowledge gap. All of these things have been talked about, and there's been no new ideas. There's been nothing. No one's tried anything. It's always kind of been this narrative of, well, we need to talk more about how college isn't the right move for everybody. We got to get people back in the trades, which I agree with, but you can't just rely on that to convince people to go into the field.
We're going to touch on that too, because I think labor and the problems around labor, where I see where it's certainly, you just pointed out, it's hurting you guys and hurting the mechanical industry, but it's hurting the whole industry. But I'd love to get your opinion on that, so we'll touch on that too. I'll make a note. But staying on topic here for the shift, because I want people to know, like, so at that point you're a year and a half into it. It's the middle of COVID.
Yep.
Like, why not just quit?
Because that's a good question, because we easily could have, but I was so confident in that the industry had to change, and it's not I could not believe that, I don't know, 2 years from then or 5 years from then, that it would just always remain the same, because at the heart of it, the customer experience was terrible. And these customers are spending a ton of money. And I was always somewhat amazed at what customers tolerated in this industry, and I just was like, I'd spent, had I been 5 years in the industry, had I been like 29, might have quit. But, I was 40, 41. I'd been through it. I was confident enough. I've met people from high levels of all the OEMs, all the other dealerships. Like, I knew what the landscape was, and I knew if we just stayed with it and we focused on the customer, that we could eventually win.
Yeah. And so it was finally just staying in it long enough to find where you could serve the customer best. And it sounded like the thought of where the idea ultimately came from the customer. Here's my problem.
Exactly.
What was the day you guys figured out, oh, you know what, I know how we can fix this?
So we kept hearing it from customers, and then I had that kind of tough meeting with our team where I told them we were going to die if we kept going on the certain trajectory. It just wasn't picking up steam. We couldn't get, momentum is a really important thing for young companies. And so I just told them, I was like, look, we're going to die if we stay this way. Customers, keep telling us that service is their biggest problem. What they said about the sales and rental piece was that the word they used was, it's inconvenient. And so, it makes sense, right? It was inconvenient, but service is the problem. So I tasked our engineering team, like, hey, you guys shift, you just build the app to facilitate service, and then I'm going to focus on going out and trying to find as many technicians as I can. And that's what I focused on. It took us like 2 months. We launched like the first version in January, and it was immediate. Customers, I found a few who would try it. They put in requests for service. They got somebody like next day, and then they just started getting invoices that are half of what the dealer invoices were, and it was just game on.
But really, it's the convenience is what they love the most.
So I think, it's different on who you're talking to. So if you're talking to the owner of the company, they love the cost savings, right? Because they feel it and they're close to it. And some owners of companies might not even realize that it takes 2 weeks to get a technician from a dealership. Yeah. So then the user of it, like an equipment manager or a fleet manager, they love the convenience, because maybe cost savings is great, but they might not, they're incentivized. Mm-hmm. They don't necessarily get the benefit of the cost savings, but what they love is that they don't have to call and wait to hear back. They can actually take a more active role, like, hey, I put in a request, I've got choice, and then I pick somebody, and I know when I'm going to get a technician.
Yeah. And the project managers who just got their project slowed down or shut down is usually probably climbing all over the equipment manager, and now that's a little more seamless process.
Definitely. And also what helps us is it's a new concept in some ways, but in other ways it's not necessarily new. Like what we found was, there are these independent mechanics who have been in the market for a while. And so some customers have been using him, but what they only knew like one mechanic. And so there's a ton of value that we provide to them because now we can show them 15. Right? And so that also helped us a ton where we didn't necessarily have to pitch customers and sell them on, hey, these independent mechanics, they're just as good as dealer mechanics. Like they knew from using them. So that helped us a ton as well.
One of the things I liked that you and I talked about this morning before we got on camera was the actual technicians. You're improving their lives too. Mm-hmm. They're a lot of you're saving these ultimate customers, but you're actually, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but these technicians are having the opportunity to not only make more money, but have a little more freedom and flexibility in their life.
100%. So there's a guy named Bill Gurley who's like a really renowned investor in Silicon Valley, and I read as much as what he writes, podcasts. He's unbelievable. He wrote these 10 commandments for marketplaces because that's really what we are. We're a labor marketplace. And what you can do is you can rank your opportunity or the strength of your marketplace based on how many of those commandments you check off. And that's the thing. One of the biggest things is that when you can provide value to both sides, that's what one of the most important characteristics. And that, so we've talked about what it means for customers, but yes, for technicians, the reality is that they get paid 3x more by being independent than working for a dealer, and that's one of the ways you solve the workforce challenge. Yeah. Like it's crazy to me when you have dealers who are talking about, hey, we can't find mechanics, and these are highly skilled, people, right? Like you're fixing these $400,000 machines. Like you and I can't go do that. Yeah, so then how are you expected to recruit people for highly skilled work when you pay them $30 an hour, right? $35 an hour. Right. Like I was talking to somebody the other day, and they told me what a UPS driver makes, and it far exceeded what a heavy equipment technician makes. Like, does that make any sense? And so the ability for really talented techs to then go out on their own and make 3 times the money, that's what the market pays. Yeah. And so
now, are those folks already set up properly to do all that, or is that part of what you guys do too? Is help them get set up?
No,
get their insurances and whatever else.
So ultimately, we want to help with that process of like, hey, we're going to set them up. But the beauty of getting started in this is that they're already there. So the dealers, they make you buy your own tools when you start. So all these guys own their own tools, from day one. Most will like do the payroll deduction. Like, hey, we just hired you as a mechanic. Great. Here, we'll deduct this from your pay. And so then after 2 years, the guy owns his own tools. Yeah. And then when they go independent, they buy their own insurance, and then they buy a service truck, or they find like one at Ritchie Brothers, so they're not buying a brand new one. But yeah, all these guys are set up to do business, and we're just helping them. We're helping them. They're not marketers. So in addition to making more money and getting choice of jobs, they typically have a small customer base, 5 to 8 customers. And so the value that we show them is like, here's the overall market. And now you can just pick and choose what jobs you want to participate in. I found that a lot of the independents are traveling really far because, like I said, they don't have websites necessarily. And so they just have to take the jobs whoever calls them. So then, I'm driving 3 hours each way. So now we set everybody with a territory, and the goal is to find them everything within an hour radius, because that way they're not wasted time driving, and then customers aren't getting these really large travel bills.
Right. That's smart. Mm-hmm. Now, like any scenario where you're helping everybody win, or any situation where everyone that's in the situation is actually winning and benefiting, is really the only way to do business. And it's I think it's actually a responsibility to figure that out.
Yeah, and we have guys, so we'll have technicians who they'll do 12 jobs a month on the Heave app. And then we have guys who will do 3. It's up to them. You know?
And a lot of these guys full-time independents?
Full-time. Yep.
That's awesome.
So the guys who do 3 jobs, they might just be busy with their current customer base, but and they'll pick up a job on a Saturday or something, and then there are guys who are kind of transitioning to full time, just doing stuff through us.
All right, so I want to transition to the business itself. So, like the struggles that you've had in the last 4 years, I don't even want to say struggles; they're just challenges that you've got to face, right?
Yeah.
Capitalizing the business, scaling the business, when to hire, when to pivot. Let's touch on a couple big ones then I think are near and dear to our world, which is financing or cash flow or do I raise equity? Should I bring a partner on? Can I find debt? Like all these things. And you know what? Like we're just in the middle of facing all those decisions.
Yep.
So going from that transition and then figuring out, which I understand you bootstrapped to it. Then in January, I remember getting a phone call, and you guys figured it out, right? Yep. And so now, I know you just had some successful closings, and so talk about how you trying to make that decision. I'm going to scale. I know where I want to go. Where do I need money? What kind of money? Where do I get it from? What's that process? Let's talk. How did you make the decisions you ultimately made?
So we did bootstrap it for 3 years, which was very challenging, very painful, and then. It sounds very strange, but I'm sure like a lot of people who listen to this who have started a business have had a similar experience where your company is working, but you are like, holy shit, we're going to go out of business because it's working. So it started working. Yeah. we're generating revenue, we're growing the business. But the problem for us was we were paying the technicians faster than what customers will pay us. So that's our problem of, hey, this is working. So we were a customer of yours. You helped us for a good period of managing that spread so we could continue growing the business and proving out our model. I always kind of knew that for us, our opportunity was going to be being venture backed. So in the last 18 months, I've had tons of pitch meetings with VC firms, all over the country. Silicon Valley, here, some base here in Florida, Atlanta, and that process is fascinating. I like everything else. I think back to those first few meetings that I took 18 months ago, and naive, oh, I mean, don't they see it? How could they pass on this? And then I'm like, that must have been the worst pitch ever, and just, it's kind of like Shark Tank, but it's not. I mean, these are really thorough meetings, but that whole process was unbelievable. And what it forces you to do is it forces you to look hard at your business, because you have these really intelligent people who that's all they do. They value companies. They look at opportunity. And, at first I think it's natural to be to feel, I don't know, or defensive. Defensive is a good word, right? Yeah. You just don't know what we're trying to do. Yeah. And it's no. If you think about what they're bringing up, they're pointing out vulnerabilities in your business. And so the smart thing to do is to think about what they're talking about and then address it. And so we were able to shore up those vulnerabilities over that 18-month period to where it's really exciting for us, where we closed the deal with a well-respected Silicon Valley venture firm called Long Journey Ventures. And the deal is now officially done, money in the bank as of Monday this week. So now we can actually grow, add a real team, and go scale the business.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple things you said that I really want people to take out of that. One is you obviously had a vision, because you said you always thought you'd be venture backed. Okay? Maybe you didn't have to be venture backed, but your plan and thought was it was there. So you worked towards that.
Sure.
So 18 months ago you started. If you just kind of kicked around the business idea in January, that's only 8 months ago.
Right.
So 10 months prior to that, you had got your reps. You started building relationships. Yep. You practiced. You went to one meeting after another meeting after another meeting. How many of these meetings did you have?
I don't know. A lot of entrepreneurs will have a spreadsheet that says I got 187 no's. Yeah. I don't think I want to look at that and know how many no's there were, but it was a ton of meetings.
But a lot. You had a lot of reps, and those reps turned into no's, but when it came time, now the business is triggered. You've had some reps already. You've had your no's.
Go figure that revenue and actually growing revenue helps a ton when you're talking to venture companies.
Yeah. Yes. But it wasn't just the revenue, because I'm sure your presentation, when you had the revenue and what you were going to do and how you articulate, you took all those vulnerabilities beforehand. And maybe they even helped you shape or gave you the courage to do it in January. And so we talk a lot about building these relationships before you need them. And then it sounds like you did exactly that.
100%. Yeah, like I said, it was helpful to see, because you're in it every day, and you have to have a strong vision, and you have to have belief, and you have to have confidence. Otherwise, you would quit, right? And so it is helpful for a fresh set of eyes to look at it that's not biased and be like, ooh, but what about this? Have you thought about this? The one word that is thrown around a lot when you start talking about marketplaces is the disintermediation. And what that means is, hey, what happens the first time a technician goes out to that customer job and just hands a business card and they try to cut you out of it? That's something that you have to solve. Fortunately, we were able to solve that very early. The way our economics work, we don't take anything from the technicians, so there's no incentive for them to cut us out. And then on the customer side, just the convenience aspect. What we also found with large customers, it's a huge advantage for us, is the more geographies you work in, the more you want to use us. Because we have a customer right now that works in 10 different states. And, they have 4 different brands of equipment. So they have to keep up 35, 40 different dealer relationships across that geography. If they tried to cut us out, they would have to set up all of those independent mechanics, W-9, set them up as a vendor. It's a nightmare. And then get invoices from all those independent mechanics. So the larger customers love the consistency of, hey, Heave's the only company that invoices me. It's the only vendor that I set up.
Right.
So we solved the disintermediation part very early, but it was, those venture firms were like, well, what about disintermediation? How are you going to solve that? How are you going to prevent people from trying to cut you out? And it's just like those meetings helped, strengthen our business.
Yeah, I think you provide enough value in any scenario, then people are going to inherently want to give back. And
Correct.
I would just say to the construction world, there's very few people willing to suffer through what it would take to solve some of the problems in the construction industry. And if someone did it, in this case, it solves a great problem. If your first move is trying to figure out, and you're giving you a great savings, real cost, and your first move is to try to figure out how to cut them out, that's just not going to come back well in the world of the universe I believe in myself. So I would say to people just to strongly encourage, take advantage of the people that are actually trying to provide value and not hurt them. But that goes without saying. It's going to happen. But the great majority of folks in the construction world they know the difference between someone who's taking advantage of them and someone who's trying to help them. And I could just see that world pouring into you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm a believer in karma too. But I also think that one of the unique positions that we hold is that customers, they know that we're not, I use the word extractive. They know that we're not. Dealers have been maximally extracting from customers for a long time. And that's one of the main tenets of why they're unhappy with service. And what I mean by that is every customer who would listen to this has had that situation where they had a software issue with a wheel loader, and the dealer came out and they got an $1,800 invoice. That is what I call maximally extracting from a customer. And so, it just doesn't make a lot of sense because our business, we're not killing it on every single repair. The beauty of our business is the scaling aspect. We're going to become successful and make our money by being able to provide service in all 50 states. And that's ultimately our goal and our vision in the next 5 years is we want to be the largest service provider for heavy equipment in the country. And we can do that by nature of being brand agnostic through technology. There's no dealer that can service the country because you are restricted to a geography.
Right. Yeah, that's really cool. So shifting gears on you one more time here. You and I are both going to support the Dirt World Summit with BuildWit. Great organization, certainly focused on construction. And I want to talk to you about what are your goals at the Dirt World Summit? What are you hoping to accomplish out of that? And I could share you some of ours.
Sure. Number one is awareness. That is the biggest thing. Our biggest challenge is just awareness, is getting our name out, getting the concept out to our customer. We hear from people all the time. You had earlier in this podcast, you mentioned hey, one of the things that contractors kick back and forth is, do we hire our own technicians? And we hear that a lot when customers find out about us. They go, I didn't know this existed. I wouldn't have hired these 5 mechanics because a lot of the time, they're hiring them as an insurance policy, right? And so most of the time they don't have anything to work on. And so our biggest thing that we want to get out of attending the Dirt World Summit is just, we are here, this is what we do, this is how it works, and we love the audience. That's why we're supporting it and sponsoring it, is because they've done a great job of building this organization and getting customers to participate, and it's the right type of customers for us. These are customers that if you're part of this dirt world, you're basically opting in and saying, we want to do things differently. This is a lot of contractors in my entire career, they haven't wanted to tell their story. They feel like, hey, I don't want my competition to know how I do things. And so it's been, that's one of the reasons why it's been like such an underground industry in a certain way, is because no one wants to talk about it.
Yeah.
So those are the perfect customers for us to reach.
So we have a similar reasoning. We want to, I want to support them. I think what they're doing in both the education space, the strong focus on trying to help the community of construction stay alive and thrive, and the fact that bringing more people into construction, telling a story in a completely different way about construction. And I think for us, look, I'm really proud of what we've done here. We've certainly solved the problem and created a solution for someone's ability in the contracting world to finance a project.
Sure.
Whether they choose to or not is a different story, but they now have an option. And we want to create awareness that exists, because like you just said, one of the things that we hear all the time, where were you guys a year ago? I wish I knew it. I wish I knew about you guys 2 years ago. I wish I knew about you before I took this project. I wish I knew about you before I turned that project down. And it goes on and on and on, and this cost savings and the efficiencies. And so I think it's a great place for us to make a real splash. We've actually never sponsored any trade show. I actually, as you and I talked before, I hate trade shows. I actually, from my days in medical device, I hate them. And
here's a gift bag.
Exactly.
It has a keychain. It has this.
And what I liked about this is when I actually looked at it, it was not a convention. It looked like it really. I like the fact they used a summit. It is a summit. It has great speakers. There's great information being delivered, and they're trying to solve a problem with the summit, not just have a show, And so I really like that. I'm looking forward to being there. It's for those of you who don't know, it's October 25th through the 27th in Houston, Texas. Great organization, great world. If you don't know about it, check it out. Dirt World Summit.
Great speakers. I've actually had the pleasure of hearing Jocko Willink speak before. He's the. Where did you hear him speak?
I'm part of an entrepreneurial group called the Arte Syndicate. He came to the Arte Syndicate and spoke to us in a really small fashion. It's a really group of entrepreneurs, and he was fascinating and great stories. I've read his books.
Yep.
I've read as much as I can about him. I follow him online and his social. He's a guy who's really pouring out to people, and I don't think he expects a lot back in return. I think he just understands that if he shares what he's doing. So that's enough reason, period, to go, in my opinion.
Oh, no doubt.
Have you heard him speak before?
I've never heard him speak. I've read his books. I'm a huge fan. He, to me, is like the most intimidating individual. Like, that is the guy you don't want to run into in a dark alley. He just looks like the baddest dude on the planet. I love his message. And I'm looking forward to being there in the same zip code as that guy. Yeah.
Well, the good news, if you ever ran into him in a dark alley, you'd have never known he was there by the time it was over. So it's all good. I want to wrap up, and I want to talk a little bit about, I love your, you come from a sports background, I do too. I know you've taken a ton of that, and again, we talked about that at length, but you're about to scale this business, right? You've taken on a partner and a VC company. Yep. The goal is certainly not to stay the same size.
No, definitely not. In fact, I shouldn't even be here right now. I should be growing the business. I'm falling behind.
Yes. So scaling a business, when to take on more work, what markets to go into new and next, like all of that is something that I think this audience would really benefit from. So let's talk about how your decision making is on building your team out. Where do you start? How do you know when to move into another market, which is equivalent to how do you know when to take on a bigger project or go into government contracting? All those things. So let's just talk through your philosophies on leadership.
Yeah, so
scaling.
I'm sure we're going to make mistakes. That's just something that you have to understand and know. I'm a big believer in going deeper than going wide. So like we have core markets. Like our core markets are Florida and Texas. Like our goals are to dominate those two markets because there's plenty of opportunity in those markets. But we've already been pulled in other areas. It's just not going to be our focus necessarily. And so a lot of our growth is going to come from customers. Like we've had customers who have used us in Dallas who ask, hey, can we use you in Miami? Can we use you in Indianapolis? And so we've now been doing repairs in Indianapolis. it wasn't somewhere where I looked on a map and said, hey, I want to go there. It was customer led. And so we're going to have that, which is exciting. But what we want to do is really dominate and prove it out in the core markets and then grow from there. So that's our core philosophy. We've hired salespeople for the first time. We haven't had any salespeople. Like our team is going to consist of software engineers and salespeople. That's going to be our team.
Because there's a lot to do still with the app and developing the app and moving it
to
out
me,
as
that's
you scale.
yeah, that's the most exciting part. And that's just like, it's funny. I used to, when I started the company, I used to tell people that it wasn't like my destiny to start a company. I'm really conservative by nature. And I think I was lying to myself now that I'm 3 years later into the journey. And I just kind of come to the realization of I probably was destined to do it because of, like, looking back, I hate the environment of things never changing. I hate, like, I was talking to somebody I used to work with the other day, and he was explaining to me a problem that he was encountering. It's been the same problem 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Nothing will ever change. Yeah. And so I love, like, that part of our company of, I know that our app 6 months from now is not going to look like it does today. Yeah. And that's really exciting because we come in and we're like, hey, we have a little bit of an issue with communication between technicians and the customer. How are we going to fix that? And then we kind of workshop it, and then we leave and tell the software guys, like, build that. So, like, I think probably 30 to 45 days from now, customers on their app are going to be able to see the service truck driving to them. That's like, cool. We're going to be doing really cutting edge, like, really cool stuff. And that's one of the things that I love the most about what we're up to.
Making that experience even better.
Yeah, like, we're not here to just, like, kick our feet up and be like, hey, it's working. Like, things always come up. Yeah. But the ability to react quickly, that's the other thing of why it probably was my destiny. Like, you get in these larger companies and nothing moves, or like the smallest thing requires like 50 people to like agree, which never happens, and so therefore everything stays the same.
I love it.
Yeah.
You got to admit too, you probably like that little bit of like where you flirt down, touch all the pain, and get yourself back out of it. Touch the pain again, come back out of it. That journey of owning your business and coming in and you just feel like, I'm gonna fail, I gotta survive. I'm actually okay.
You talk to anybody and they always I forget who it was, but they're like, every company has 3 near-death experiences, and like anybody who started a business, will shake their head and go, yes. And then they think back like, yeah, I almost died then. Yeah. It's just true.
Maybe one day we'll do a separate podcast and just share our near-death experiences. We'll at least have 6 of them.
I think
I might not be up to 5 at this point, but
I'd like to be really successful at that point where I have that discussion where I admit how we failed, or how, like when I couldn't sleep because we weren't going to make payroll.
I have an old partner that reminds me of them sometimes because he lived in it with me during that world, but does not live in it now. And I was like, I've compartmentalized that, and I don't go back there really too often unless I really need some motivation to remind myself, hey, whatever I'm dealing with now, it's not nearly as bad as it might have been prior. And so other than that, I try not to go back there either. But it will be fun to do down the road for sure.
Yeah, the sporting background that you kind of started on, for me, like. I hate buzzwords, and everybody always says the same thing. Oh, I'm competitive. I hate to lose, and all that other stuff. Like, who doesn't say that? But it's actions, right? It's the desire to like make an impact. Like, that's one of the biggest things that motivates us and our team is to make a difference, to do something that both sides really, really enjoy, and that saving customers money, helping get their equipment fixed, but then technicians, I gotta look, like, we've paid one guy like $90,000 this year, and
this is awesome.
I know, it's unbelievable. And then we're 8 months into the year. We didn't exist in 2022. So this guy, he's a technician. He has his own group of customers. I don't know what he made last year, but he's probably going to double his existing income because of our app. Like, that's unbelievable.
That's awesome. And he's doing it probably in a way that he enjoys more.
Yeah.
He's not traveling as
He's
far.
not a Heave employee. He
Yeah.
doesn't have to take on a job that he doesn't want to do.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
it's
awesome.
that's like, you know, when you play sports, you want to make an impact. Like, who wants to go out there and be 500? Who wants to, you know, just go through the motions? And that's one of the things that's always been in the back of my mind, like driving me, pushing me forward, is like, do something that matters.
I agree. And you know, it's funny. You know, you and I are similar age, or at least through the similar phase. Anyway, I might be a little older than you, I think, at this point, but or at every point. But anyway, my story. So you get to a certain point, you realize that it actually isn't fun when you're just worried about yourself.
Yep.
And it actually, if you get a little taste of what it's like when you're helping so many other people, or you're actually solving a real problem, then that problem that you solve pours back into you, and it pours way back into you, way more than it does if you're trying to pour into yourself. And it's hard in a young age or immature, like I certainly was, to get that. But if you could just take like that, program it in your head and believe it, it's so much better.
Yeah, you're not selling. Like, you're aligned, right?
Correct.
You're aligned with your customers. And you know, that was one of the things that was hard for me where I was before. It's like, are we really making a difference? Like, they could buy equipment at 15 other places. They can rent it 20 other places. You know, like, that's hard, you know. But to be aligned with customers where, you know, you truly have their best interests. Like, we're not, you know, we've sent out, like, the best marketing for us is sending a customer a $275 invoice for a service. They're like, I've had, like, wait, this is
usually my trip charge.
Right. Well, trip charges can be like $1,000. So it's just like, to be totally aligned is such an unbelievable position, and we love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, tell people here how they can find you guys, how they can find you, anything that you have out, information. What's the best way to
our
get to
website is heave.co, heave.co. It throws everyone off. But when I started the company, somebody owned the .com domain, and they wanted me to pay them $40,000 or something stupid. And so we just rolled with the .co. Our app is in the App Store. You know, that we have 2 apps. So the yellow app is for customers to order service. They can rate technicians on it. And then the black app is for technicians to book jobs and to put in their schedule and everything. So
nice. So 2 apps.
2
Yellow's
apps.
for customers, blacks for the technicians, and heave.co. So HEAVE.co. What about you? LinkedIn? Any personal social stuff?
I got to get better on that. I'm on LinkedIn. We hired a really talented woman for marketing. So I think people are going to start to see a lot more content on a real schedule. That's cohesive. So on all of the social channels, you'll see a beefed up presence for Heave. So Facebook, LinkedIn, probably even TikTok. That will not be me, but she does a great job.
That's awesome. Well, man, Alex, I really appreciate you coming on, telling your story. Awesome. I think folks are going to help a lot from this information. I think what you're doing is fantastic. I encourage you to stay with it. If there's anything that we can do to help you, please do. Any of our customers network, please help check out Alex, heave.com, heave.co.
Oh, he said .com.
Yeah, heave.co. And make sure we give them some support, let people know about it. If you're not in the heavy equipment world, but you certainly know people that are, give them a hand.
Yep. We can fix your equipment.
I love it. This has been another episode of the Construction MF'ers. I appreciate you all joining us. If you like the show, if you found value in it, please share it with friends. Give us a subscribe. Tell anyone you can, and we'll see you again soon. God bless you all.